Hi, I'm Pat Forster of the STS-128 crew, and you're watching NASA TV.
Good morning, Discovery, and good morning today, Pat.
Good morning, Shannon in Houston, and I want to say good morning to my family, a special hello to my mom, and I'd like to thank my friend Andrew who wrote that song.
And with that, the 13 crew members of the International Space Station and Space Shuttle Discovery now awake. They'll have some personal and off-duty time for breakfast and hygiene before starting their activities today, a day that'll be focused on the continued transfer work and packing up of the Leonardo cargo craft, and also some off-duty time for the shuttle crew members.
Danny, I asked you this question on the ground, and now I'm going to ask you up there on the space station and on Discovery, how has this been different this second time around?
Well, I will say that it's been a very busy mission, quite a bit different in design to 117. We've had an MPLM, so there's been a lot of transfer equipment going to and from the multi-purpose logistics module. The EVAs have gone great, but again, quite a bit different in design to the ones we conducted on 117. But all in all, it's been a very successful mission. I think everybody here is in good spirits, and we are ready to finish up here and come home.
And how has it been different in regards to, just this being the second time around? I know the missions are completely different, but how is it different being the veteran this time up there?
Well, I think one of the benefits is that you already know some of the unknowns as a first-time flyer. So I, knew a lot about the living situation up here, knew a little bit about how things were conducted here on Space Station, whereas on 117 they didn't have that knowledge, and so everything was a new experience for me, like a brand new day. But coming up here with a little bit of experience does help in at least getting you situated with just some of the day-to-day activities, how to get your food and how to plan your day, primarily because the shuttle missions are very, very busy missions, very much like a sprint, whereas a space station is more like a marathon. And so it's really needed. You need to understand that kind of stuff when you want to try and integrate the two crews.
Danny, talk about you had your third spacewalk last night, and this may be the last time that you're ever going to get to do a spacewalk. Did you think about that at all, or as you went into the airlock for the last time, were there any thoughts about, hey, I may not get to do a spacewalk again?
Going into the airlock, none of those thoughts were in my mind because I knew that we had an EVA in front of us. Every EVA is challenging and dangerous, and you have to take it very seriously. The only time I really started reflecting on the fact that my EVA was over and it could possibly be my last EVA was at the end of the EVA, once everybody was safe inside and we'd successfully accomplished our mission. And really, that's when I reflected on it. And, to be quite honest with you, just being given the honor and the privilege to be up here to support our country and to support this agency doing this kind of job, I have no regrets, and I'm looking forward to what's next.
I know you say that it's a sprint and that you're constantly working, and I understand that. And after your first mission, you had some time back on the ground to reflect on the amazing thing that you have just done. Have you had any reflection time so far up there, the fact that you get to do this a second time?
Well, having had the benefit of going through one training flow and one mission before, I guess I had an idea of the things that I wanted to do when I got up here, and I've had an opportunity to do some of those things, but it's been very busy. We haven't had a whole lot of time off. We had a half day a couple of days ago. We'll have a half day this afternoon, and that's when I'm looking to catch back up, to have an opportunity to go out to the Japanese module, look out the window a little bit, to maybe take some personal photographs up here and things of that sort. But like I said, it's just wonderful to be up here and working with such fine individuals like Tim Coper here next to me.
And I'll I'll get to Tim in a second. I'm not ignoring you, Tim. We just love our native El Pasoans, so thank you for being patient. And one more question for you, Danny. The first time around on STS-117, we were so lucky. We launched on the first fry. This time around, I think it was 5 days waiting, 3 scrubs. Walk me through what that week was like back in Florida.
Well, you know, the one thing you know about this business is that you know not to expect things the way you plan them. And so for 4 days, we woke up thinking that we were going to be launching that day. And obviously, we only launched one of those days. But, you know, you just have to roll with the flow. The bottom line is that space flight is certainly not an exact science. It's hard to have millions of pieces of equipment all working exactly the same at the exact same time. NASA does a great job of it, but occasionally there are hiccups, and we take our time and we do it right because safety is a #1 job here. And, you know, I think for me, it was more of an opportunity to reflect on the fact that, you know, I had a mission coming up, and so I don't necessarily know that it was a bad thing. It just, you know, it was what it was, and I'm just happy to be here right now.
Tim, you are heading back home. You spent quite a lot of time up there in space. What kind of emotions do you have going through right now as you're wrapping up your stay and heading back home?
We know it's been really interesting living here for a couple of months, and you know, initially when I came up, I thought that if I didn't stay for, you know, several months, I might feel as if I didn't have an opportunity to do everything that I wanted. But it's really interesting how it's been just a matter of expectation. Before the shuttle launch, I was ready to stay for several months, and then once they launched, I started to set my mindset to come back home. And in terms of emotions, right now, I'm very much looking forward to seeing my family and getting back to life in general on the planet. But I'm also going to miss my crew here, and right now I have 2 crews, both the Expedition 20 crew and the STS-128 crew, which I go home with. But I'm going to miss this place. I'm going to miss the beautiful views, the sunsets and sunrises, and being able to contribute to the mission here.
What kind of advice did you give to Nicole? Have you spoken to her much? Any tips of the trade that you can give to her?
You know, I'm looking at Nicole right now. She's down in the next module, and you know, they scheduled time for us to do a handover so that we can transfer information. We have a formal process in which we do that for items that involve safety, but there are also lots of tricks of the trade, where things are located, how to do very specific tasks, and we've been talking about that. And before I go, hopefully I have a chance to discuss most of those. But the great thing about a 6-person crew is that we actually have the ability to continue that transition. So the rest of the Expedition 20 crew will continue that process once I go home.
One more question for you, Tim, one more for Danny, and then we got to get out. Tim, I know you haven't spent too much time with Danny, but what have you learned from him, or what has the interaction been like? I know he's sitting right next to you, but talk to me a little bit about Danny and the type of astronaut he is.
We know I've really appreciated my time with Danny, both on the ground for the training that I did with 128, which was limited since I came up on 127, and also the time here. I guess the things I appreciate about Danny the most is his EVA expertise and his very calm and direct manner to make things happen. He has a great leadership style and a great expertise in both the EVA area and being a space veteran. So I learned from all my crewmates and especially Danny.
Okay, and the last question for Danny, and this is a very important one. I looked over your menu during the 13 days you were in space. I saw a lot of Mexican food, so tell me, how is it? Is it close to home? Is it anything like what you get to eat back here?
You know, I have to tell you, I actually spend most of my time up here eating vegetables. You know, for some reason I just didn't really have the stomach this trip for Mexican food, but definitely when I get back home, I know I will. I know my wife makes some great Mexican food. I'm looking forward to going home and spending some time with the family, and you know, spending time with her and just enjoying the life on ground.
We're all watching from Austin, Tim, and we're excited that one of our own is on this expedition. How did you feel about finally launching?
Oh, you know, It's almost a faint memory now because I've been here for a couple of months, and you know, going back to that time frame when we had several delays and the families were down in Florida, and it's interesting. You know, we had several times where we suited up and we sat in the vehicle waiting to go, and each time we expected to go because we had decent weather, and then the final attempt, you know, we actually thought that we would scrub because the weather wasn't so good. And I was on the middeck with two of my other crewmates, and frankly, we were kind of surprised when the count continued. But, you know, I think that there were a lot of emotions going through my mind during the launch. You know, I was thinking about my family and the mission that lay ahead, and the fact that it had been a long time since we began training, and we were very satisfied, all of us, I'm sure, to finally get into space.
With all that training, what is it used for? What's this expedition all about?
We know it's been a very challenging and rewarding mission here, and it started out with the STS-127 mission, which was focused on bringing up a new component of space station, the exposed facility, and 3 scientific experiments that attached to that. So it was very involved with spacewalks like they've done on STS-128, and robotics, which were very integrated into those spacewalks. And so after that mission was complete, the rest of the time has been about maintaining this vehicle, about maintaining ourselves, and also executing scientific experiments. And so it's been a very full and an exciting time here, and especially now we have a new set of crew members here, and we've been working closely with them. It's been a great time.
The space program may be facing some funding problems in the future. Where do you see the program going from here?
You know, it's a good question because, you know, the folks that come up here to space station, either through a Soyuz launch or on the space shuttle, and spend time here, either a long time as an expedition crew member or a relatively short time as a shuttle crew member, you know, it's always something that we're thinking about because it directly involves us. But frankly, since we're really at the tip of that, we just wait for those decisions to be made, and then we respond to them. You know, I hope that we continue our focus on human exploration and human spaceflight, because obviously all of us that are closely involved with this think it's very vital for our nation and also for the advancement of science and technology. And so I hope that we continue that funding and that push for us to explore and to advance in those areas.
Now, we heard a rumor that you brought something up there to honor your alma mater, McCallum High School. Is this true?
Well, of course that's true. I brought a medallion up, and I'm very honored to have brought that up. I learned a lot from McCallum High School. I had some very influential teachers there. I had a great band director who was a great leader, Bill Brent, and I admire him tremendously and the things I learned from him. And I had several teachers that kept me straight and kept me on a good path. And so I'm very thankful for my time at McCallum High School.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to say to the students and teachers at McCallum who are supporting you?
I guess what I would like to say to the students in particular at McCallum High School, and actually for all those students in Austin, is that that hard work really pays off. And the main piece of advice that I would give to any student is to persevere and to set big goals. And if you set big goals and you continue to work hard and demonstrate perseverance, you'll accomplish those goals.
This is Mission Control Houston. As Discovery and the International Space Station fly 223 miles over the South Pacific, the word from the Space Station Flight Control Room from the robotics officer indicates that the Canadarm2 that you see here in the field of view has begun a very slow, almost imperceptible motion at the beginning of what will amount to about 2.5 hours of complex maneuvers in what is called a triple walk-off, basically to swap ends that are latched onto the power and data grapple fixture at the bottom of your screen on the Harmony connecting node of the International Space Station. This procedure is being conducted both by crew intervention in the Destiny Laboratory at the Robotics Workstation by Nicole Stott and Frank DeWinna, and by ground commanding by the robotics officer in the Space Station Flight Control Room. The swap of the ends of the Canadarm2, as far as what is the base and what is the active end for latching, is designed to change the ends so that we have a different latching end effector. Actually, the end of the arm that is currently grappled to Harmony becomes the grappling end, basically, and the end of the arm that you see at the top of your screen will wind up being latched to Harmony. The swap in latching end effectors will facilitate our ability to use a different end for the track and capture of the Japanese H-2 transfer vehicle 7 days after its launch from the Tanegashima Space Center in southern Japan.
Discovery ISS, this is Jean-François Clairvoy from Stockholm in Sweden, from the European Space Agency. How do you hear me?
Jean-François, we read you loud and clear. How are you?
Har han inte den med sig ens?
Jag tror det är för många länder som slåss om
Dear friends, Christer and Frank, I guess in the Columbus module, it's a great pleasure to talk to you from the ground. I will now leave the floor to Lotta Bouvin, who will present to you guests in Stockholm who are very excited about talking to you.
Det här är faktiskt det svåraste de kan göra där uppe på ISS.
This is the most difficult thing they can do on ESS, to connect down to Earth. But now we have Christer Fuglesang and his colleague with us. Hi, Christer and Frank. Welcome to Good Morning Sweden. How do you have it up there?
Hej, och
Hi,
vi får med i ert program.
and thank you for letting us be on your show. We're having it very good.
Hello, we're doing great here on board of the International Space Station, and of course it's a pleasure for me as a long-duration crew member to have Christer visiting me with Shuttle Discovery.
Ju bara faktiskt 40 mil ifrån oss.
You're only 40 Swedish miles away from us. It's not so far as one can believe. We can sometimes see ESS as a small dot up there. What do you see up there from us, down here on Earth?
Ja, mest så ser man faktiskt moln.
Mostly we see clouds and oceans. The Earth's surface is mostly covered by sea, but in between we travel over land areas. And that's what's interesting. You can see red, you can see deserts, you can see green when you have forests. Sometimes it's very fascinating traveling over habitated areas during nighttime when you see all the lights.
Frank, you've been up for several months. Christer has just been there for, well, about a week, and he is going back soon, but you will stay. How do you feel about that?
Well, of course, I would also like to go back and see my wife, Lena, my kids, my family and friends. But on the other hand, it's also a pleasure to be here on board of the International Space Station with all the colleagues. We still have a lot of work ahead of us. It's wonderful to be in space. And of course, I can benefit a little bit more of these beautiful views and the wonderful environment that we have here inside the space station and all the science that we are doing a little bit more than Christer. So it's also good to stay.
Okay, vi har 3 gäster här.
We have 3 guests here, waiting anxiously to talk to you guys. Go ahead, Mark. Hi, Christer. This is Mark. We're so proud of you. I just want to say it. First of all, we're so proud of you as our own space traveler. I was thinking about one thing, about sleeping. What happens when you're about to North America and it's night? And you're over Africa when it's night. How do you sleep on board? And do you dream differently in space? And when you wake up, do you think I'm a spaceman? Is it strange?
Ja, det är lite underligt ibland.
It's a little bit strange sometimes.
Vi använder en 24 timmars rytm.
But we use a 24-hour rhythm here, so we sleep 8 hours, on paper at least. Then we have a 16-hour day, 8 to 10 hours of work. work schedule.
Sen i praktiken blir det ofta mera arbete.
In practice, you usually work more than that, but
Personligen så tar
personally,
att sova tyngdlösheten.
it's a little bit hard to sleep in weightlessness, I think.
Efter ett tag så vänjer man sig.
But after a while, you kind of get used to it.
Vill kanske ibland ha lite.
You wake up and you kind of want something to sleep on or turn around, but that's not really possible in the weightlessness.
Hej, det här är Malena
Hi,
Herman.
this is Malena Herman.
Jag är väldigt stolt över att fråga.
It's very proud to ask you. I will ask Frank things also later, but my question to you, Christer, is you look very fit. I know you're a little bit older than me, but you're very tall for being an astronaut. But my question to you is, how do you keep in shape physically before these spacewalks, before the time in space? How do you keep in shape?
Hej Malena.
Hi, Lena.
Jag går på
Well, I go to the gym
i veckan.
2-3 times a week,
Jag gör styrketräning och ett pass.
lift some weights,
En timme.
between half an hour and hour,
Springer 1 eller 2 gånger i veckan.
run 1-2 times a week.
Ibland spelar någon sportanslag.
Sometimes we do some kind of sport. I like to play soccer,
Så där något halvår innan starten så vrickade jag foten rätt ordentligt.
but half a year before start, I twisted my ankle, so I figured I have to stop that so I don't injure myself before the trip.
Hej Christer, det här är Jan Björklund.
Hi Christer, this is Jan Björklund. Me and all other Swedes read about how you live and how you sleep and how you go to the restroom and all of that. But I was thinking, could you tell me shortly, there is a science purpose for why you're up in space. What are the questions that we will be able to answer up in space instead of staying on Earth and do science?
Ja, hej Jan.
Hi Jan.
Det är framförallt tyngdlösheten vi utnyttjar här.
It's primarily the weightlessness that we use. You can just float around and
Man kan studera fenomen på ett annat sätt.
that makes it possible to study phenomena in a certain way that's not possible on Earth.
Områden som
And in different areas such as physics, different kind of physics, biology,
vi odlar en del saker här.
we grow different things here, medical research, by studying how the body functions in weightlessness, we can understand more how the body works, bring up new pharmaceuticals and scientific methods. Another way is that you have a beautiful view down towards Earth, and you can study the Earth, but also towards the sun outside. We have an experiment called SOLAR that can measure the sun's rays, and that can make us understand climate change better. We're actually bringing that back down to Earth with our space shuttle. We also look into space. A lot of particles come from space. And myself, actually, I have a special thing that I would like to show when I go to different schools, how different particles come down to Earth, but even more up here.
Men förr i världen så tänkte man ju att framtiden låg i rymden och att vi skulle bo på olika stationer.
But before, people used to think that we would live in space, and not every one of us would like to live a life like that. What's the future in space research, and could we actually end up regular people traveling in space during our lifetimes?
Ja, det kommer absolut.
Yes, definitely. Regular people, so to speak, can travel in space. Today, if you have enough money, you can actually do that, but you have to be super rich. They bought their own tickets with the Russians and traveled up to the space station and was here for a week. I think it will be a price that people can actually afford in the future. Maybe 1 or 2 generations, within 1 or 2 generations. I also look forward to us human beings learning to travel further and further away, Mars and even further, and finally learning how to utilize the resources on those planets. That's the future I see in front of me. We also utilize the specialized opportunities for research up here, especially in the space station. The weightlessness, again, to conduct very important research.
Thank you very much. One last question. First of all, congratulations to becoming first commander. And also, is there something about Brussels or Belgium that you miss, except, I mean, more than your family and wife, of course?
Well, of course, the first thing we miss is indeed the family, the wife, the kids. Of course, also in Belgium, I like my country. I like the good food that they serve there, typical Belgian food and French fries. I like that as well. So, of course, I will be having that when I come back. But the highest on the priority list is, of course, the family.
I've understood that you yourself have actually created something yourself called a particle meter that you constructed yourself. I can see you have it up in space. What do you use that for? I'm very happy to get that question so I can actually demonstrate it. This here has two pieces of plastic. They give out an electrical signal when there goes a particle through it. We've connected it so that when there's a particle going through it, the lights blink. It's hard to see, but one light blinks a lot. That's one particle at a time. And if there's 10, you have 2,000 and then 100,000 far left. If the particle goes through both at the same time, you can program it. Then it blinks a little bit slower because then it's only particles that goes through this direction that give us a signal. And this can be used to look at and understand how many particles there is at different places in the course around Earth where I am. I can look in what direction the particles come from. I can also discriminate what kind of particles. But mostly it is to show school students what radiation actually is, that you have radiation in space. I also have similar ones that I built, that I traveled to the different schools to show the students. There's a lot more up here than down on Earth. So I record this and then you can compare it. And you can also look at the map where we're at, how many particles go through it. Thank you, Christer. Thank you, Frank, for all the answers. We have 1,000 more questions. These ladies and gentlemen don't feel like they have had all the questions that we wanted to, and not me either. So we hope that we're allowed to get back to you. Maybe not in space, but we hope that you're coming back to us. And then we get a chance to ask all the questions when you land again. One last question. Was there a difference this time compared to last time 3 years ago? Yes, it was. You knew more what was happening. It was easier to adapt, faster. A lot easier it was. One last thing. Frank is missing some Belgian food, but I have some Swedish candy for you. This is Swedish race cars floating around in space.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. Any second, this link will be cut.
Christer and Frank, the European Space Agency is very proud of your excellent work. So, I hope your example will help.
Ja, det var väl fantastiskt.
Thank you very
much
for joining us on board of the International Space Station. It was a pleasure for us to be with you tonight.
Det är väl för sent att ge sig in på det.
Houston, Discovery, here's a highlights for Flight Day 10. This was a half day off for the crew. One of the things we got to enjoy today was a video conference with our families
which is very nice to see them. It's been a while since, especially with the people that have small children, they're in quarantine for a week, so it's really nice to touch base with your family. CJ let me sleep in a little bit, finally getting around to the morning hygiene there, and just having a little fun with the water source. Different in space. Here you see Quister getting all the equipment ready after the EVAs, and you see me carrying an RGA, which is one of the pieces of ORUs that got replaced from EVA number 3, and we're taking it to the MPLM for storage and bringing it back, hopefully for repair back on the ground. As you can see, the MPLM is now nicely in better order because now we're putting all our stuff away that was going to come back down to Earth.
So here you can see Mike Barrett taking some water samples, determining the quality of the water that we have on board, and to see if it'll be adequate for filling up or refilling the EMUs for our spacewalks.
We had an opportunity to do a little bit of the science that we have on board. Before we left the ground, 3 of us were measured sitting in the commander's seat of one of the trainers, and pictures were taken. This is to measure spinal elongation. When we go to space, typically the average person will gain 1 to 2 inches by having their spine elongate. And so what we're doing here, Nicole and I are setting up some of the equipment that will be used to measure that later on.
With the EVAs over, the team essentially decided or got instructions to reconfigure the suits. We're going to leave parts of the suits on orbit and then bring parts that are out of service, bring them back home with us. The suits are modular in design, so they can be disassembled fairly easily on orbit. Here you see myself and Krister taking arms and legs off of the suits and performing the swaps of the necessary parts. And one thing that's actually pretty interesting is the center portion of the suit, the hut, hard upper torso. You can see it's completely free, and this is what the base of the EMU.
So personal hygiene is very important in space, and you can see a good haircut being performed here. You know, it must have been a good haircut because the Marines and the Army are still getting along.
And for some more of the science, Pat and I had the chance today to do another transfer of some samples from the freezers that we have on board. On station, we have 2 large freezers called Melfi, minus 80-degree laboratory freezers. And we had samples in there today that we were removing that were at minus 95 degrees. So you can see a lot of the frost coming out as we unload these samples. You can see we're wearing gloves to protect our hands from the cold. And then we place them into a cold stowage bag, basically like a cooler, so we can transport them safely over to the small freezer that's located on the space shuttle.
Discovery Houston recommend
and
pause
the samples
now.
that we're moving today are part of a study of nutrition and the immune system, and that includes mostly blood and urine samples, and they need to go back to the ground to be completely analyzed.